Welcome to Silicon Valley Asian Business Talk.
Hello, everyone. This is Roger Chen from University of San Francisco Center for Business Studies and Innovation, Asia Pacific. Welcome to join our interview program. We want to thank you for the support.
All right. Thank you, Roger. Thank you for inviting me to this session. My background, I grew up in India and came here for my master's in the early 80s in computer science, and then moved to, and that was at Virginia Tech on the East Coast. I then got my first job at Intel. I went to a college in India called BITS Pilani, which is considered to be India's #1 private university for science and engineering. Intel was like the dream company. I was fortunate to get a job there. So about 10 years into Intel journey, you're surrounded by a lot of entrepreneurs here in Silicon Valley. And, I decided to, begin my own journey with a company called Sierra Atlantic. And, that grew to be a fairly substantial size company, about 2,500 employees worldwide over a 17-year period. And, through the course of that, we raised capital from some of the Sandal Road companies, venture funds. So that's kind of my background as a tech entrepreneur. And I've also been spending considerable time in the nonprofit sector starting 2010-11. Both here in the US and also in India. And a good part of my time also goes into working with tech startups, mostly young first-time founders, helping them build their companies, mostly as an early investor, angel investor, but sometimes I get more actively involved with them, serving on the boards and all that.
Discussion topic: lessons and wisdoms to help scale up new ventures.
What mistakes have you observed that companies or new ventures tend to make in managing this scaling up or growth phase?
Okay. So, one of the, things I've seen kind of relates to the previous question also is, people end up hiring a bunch of sales marketing people before they get the product market fit. They get
too early.
VP of sales, and you start thinking it's a sales problem. It's not really a sales problem. You don't yet have the product, right? That's one of the things that I've seen, especially when they get access to that capital, whether it's angel money or institutional investors and all of that. So I think that's one of the more common things in the early phase of this scaling. The other one I've seen is a lot of founders, especially the ones that come from a technology background, from engineering or even marketing and all of that, they do a pretty good job of building the right product, getting to the market and all of that. But they more often than not don't give the same kind of priority to the finance functions, in particular a good CFO. It doesn't have to be a CFO, but at least VP finance and at that level. And because the reality is there are so many other aspects relating to scaling a business that come from having a really good fiscal discipline and having the systems and processes in place. And frankly, a lot of VCs, when they look at your company, you might have a great growth and product and everything, all of that together, unit economics and all of that. But oftentimes having a good seasoned CFO or at least a head of finance, a VP of finance, something like that, is a very important part of how they evaluate companies, kind of building the confidence with them in terms of, their decision to invest and all of that. So I would say that's a pretty important one. The other thing is, as you start growing, there's always some tendency to sort of start, dabbling in more adjacencies or something else. But I'm a strong believer in focus, focus, focus. Unless your market is the available market is not large enough, you just want to be the best in that, and uh, you want to be the number one choice, not just today, but kind of look ahead for the next 2-3 years, and so when new technologies come, maybe there are things that you can leverage those new technologies. Like again, back to this, what's happening with the entire Chat GPT, the OpenAI, the LLMs and generative AI, right? I'm almost asking all my startups, to just at least understand if and how that may impact their business, and what can they do to sort of strengthen their product line using these things. And that comes from having the focus on your customer and which industries you serve. But those are something that I can think of. And one personally, a mistake I myself made is I mentioned the Hitachi bought a company in late 2010. But before that, Roger, we did 4 acquisitions. Bought 4.
Your company did 4 acquisitions.
Yeah, that's right. We bought 4 different companies before Hitachi bought us. And so for a long time, I was hesitant to think of acquisitions as a way of growing. And, I had this sort of concern about, because I was always big on culture, and I was worried about, hey, how would that disrupt my culture? And it's a distraction, all of that. But the reality is scale does matter, at some level. Again, since we're talking about growth stage and everything, customers do care for, the size of the vendor partner that they're working with. They want to make sure they're reliable, they have the staying power, and all of that. So M&A actually gives a very positive signal to your customers, but frankly also to your employees. So I think that's a mindset change that the CEO has to go through. And kind of relating to that, I always used to feel, I still say that the CEO, personally, I felt I can be the biggest asset or the biggest liability to the company, depending on how well I learn and grow. Because the CEO that took the company from 0 to 1 may or may not be the same CEO that can take it from 1 to 10 or whatever, right? And a lot of that depends on how well the CEO sort of, continues to learn and grow. And of course, a big part of that is bringing people into the team that have gone through that process and letting them sort of, succeed big.
Do you have any other kind of a wisdom or advice to share on scaling up new venture companies?
I mean, these days, because you also have, a lot of founders or startups that originate in other geographies, like say I work with a lot of them that come out of India. I'm involved with an initiative called Falcon X that is focused on nurturing supporting entrepreneurs that move from other parts of the world to Silicon Valley. And some of them Eastern Europe, some of them Latin America, but India is a big part of it, of course, Korea and other places. The startups from Israel have done a very good job of this, by the way, of the ones that I'm aware of. And that is relating back to the question that you were asking, in addition to the things that I touched upon, the CFO and focus and M&A and all of that, is also the founder. Oftentimes, when they're coming for a company originating in other geographies, sooner or later, my recommendation is that they move to the US, in particular Silicon Valley. It doesn't have to be Silicon Valley, but I think this is a pretty good place because still the knowledge on how to scale companies rapidly, there's no place in the world that has that sort of expertise and that talent that you can sort of tap into as here. In general, I would say they should move closer to the market. I'm been part of a company where I wrote the first check called Gray Orange, that is now an industry leader in warehouse robotics. And so the founder, brilliant guy, young founder, He built a fairly substantial size company now. I mean, it's all public information. They have raised a few $100 million. They're at a fairly large scale. And so he moved from India to the US because this is, he had to be close to the market. And then, things have changed dramatically for the better once he made that shifts, right? So I guess that's one more thing I can think about in terms of scaling, especially for, startups that begin their journey somewhere outside the US. As long as US is the, main market, which it is for majority of these companies, at least selling in the enterprise space. The B2C, India and China have large enough, market opportunities, and but in B2B, I think this is still the mainstay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point because I met other entrepreneur, for example, from Southeast Asia. They say the exact same thing. They say they have to come to the United States market because the scale.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And the other point relating to that, sorry if I'm kind of going back.
No, please, please.
Since we talk so much about product market fit, that's another thing that I say, product management in particular, maybe it's a biased view, but I strongly believe they should be not just in the US, but in Silicon Valley. Product management, because there is so much that happens, the rapid change and all the conversation, the networking that happens in Silicon Valley. I don't think there's any other place, especially as it relates to product management.
Thank you for watching.